Israel has celebrated the 70th anniversary of its creation at a time when tensions with the Palestinians are mounting. It was back in 1948 when Israel was created on Palestinian lands and immediately recognized by the United States. The development is considered as the starting point of an occupation that has triggered many wars and impacted the entire world. Soon after the creation of Israel, the forced displacement of Palestinians, known as the Nakba, or catastrophe, began. Several hundred Palestinian villages were razed to the ground, and the residents were forced to flee and were never allowed to return. Today, the refugees and their descendants around the world number 5 million. Israel has been seizing more Palestinian lands over the past decades and builds on them. What's now left for the Palestinians is a tiny fraction of their original homeland. Every year, Palestinians, even those living in Israel, hold marches and demonstrations to denounce what has happened to them. They demand the right of return to their ancestral lands.
Israel continues to grant Jews, whatever their connection or lack of connection with Israel, there's no restriction. Any Jew anywhere in the world, whether religious or not, or whether having relatives or not in Israel, has an unconditional right to return, whereas Palestinians whose families have lived for generations within what's now Israel are denied that any right to return.
Over the past 7 decades, Israeli practices in occupied Palestinian territories have drawn condemnation from the United Nations and rights groups. The condemnations have, however, done little to force Israel to change course.
We now see that these 70 years have been 70 years of unbroken ethnic cleansing and criminality, which have reached such a degree of horror that even a senior Israeli general last year compared what's going on in Israel today to what was going on in Germany during the 1930s.
The Israeli violations of Palestinians' rights are many. The regime does not hesitate to kill. To Israeli authorities, Palestinian lives don't matter at all. Meanwhile, the regime has engaged in demographic engineering, discrimination in access to education, healthcare, and building rights. In March of last year, the UN Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia issued a damning report on Israeli practices in occupied Palestinian territories. The report said that Israel has established an apartheid regime that oppresses the Palestinians as a whole.
Well, I think it was essentially the focus on apartheid as a way of describing the overall manner in which Israel has come to dominate the Palestinian people based on structures of systematic discrimination.
But for Israel, such reports and repeated UN resolutions are no big concern, as the regime has full US diplomatic cover.
Armed by the USA and other countries, Israel is certainly militarily extremely powerful compared to the virtually unarmed Palestinians. But the Palestinians have been unbroken, and if 70 years of horror, massacre, and ethnic cleansing has not broken them, it's difficult to see that anything can.
Palestinians have been let down by Arab states over the past decades. Observers believe that if Arab states had taken a unified stance against Israel, they would have considerably helped Palestinians in their struggle against the occupying force. Today, some Arab governments are even openly siding with Israel and seem to have forgotten all about the Palestinian cause. Over the past weeks, Palestinian territories, especially the Gaza Strip, have been the scene of a new wave of marches and demonstrations against Israel.
So Israel faces, looking forward from these 70 years, to continuing defeat, because only the utter defeat and rout of the Palestinians can provide any security for Israel, and that is not going to happen.
The protesters are infuriated by the United States' recognition of Jerusalem Al-Quds as Israel's capital. Many observers believe Palestinian leaders and people have come to the conclusion that they cannot count on Arab governments and are now moving towards resistance against Israel.